I have 15 minutes, which means largely that I will say some things that are completely unsupported by evidence or argument. If you would like the evidence or the argument, then I'm very happy to talk to you later in the day. I need to apologise also for this presentation. It's not displaying properly, unfortunately, so you'll just have to bear with that. I call this a satisfactory philosophy of ignorance, which is one of my favourite ideas from the physicist Richard Feynman, and you can see the quote from him there. Before I outline 5 short propositions, I want to say something about the difference between what is complicated and what is complex. When we talk about quality in the arts and evaluating arts programs, there are aspects of that that are complicated and there are aspects that are complex. Complicated things are like computers or cars. If you put in the effort, you can work out how they work, and you can make them do what you want them to do. Complex things are not resolvable simply by the use of reason and consistency. They are much more elusive. They are only partly rational, and they are not typically consistent. I think one of the problems that we have when we come to try and evaluate the arts is we approach the complex parts of that business as if they are complicated, i.e. that they simply need more time and effort to learn. If we do that, we end up wasting both time and effort and producing results that are potentially misleading. Feynman's challenge is to recognize the limitations of what can be known, because at least then, as he says, we have a chance to improve the situation. Now I have 5 simple propositions for you. And the first is that all art is interaction. And one of the words that I most worry about in this field has already been used this morning, and that's impact. I think impact, to use the term impact in the arts, is conceptually flawed and ethically concerns me, because it suggests that the person experiencing the art is a kind of neutral subject, something on which an impact is produced. But of course, that never happens. The story that I always, or the example that I always use to illustrate this point, and forgive me if you've heard me say this before, but if you take 2 teenagers to see a production of Shakespeare for the first time, the chances are one of them will come out buzzing, saying, right, I'm now going to go to drama school. I've found what I want to do with my life. And the other will simply say, if you ever inflict 3 hours of tedium like that on me again, I will kill you. That's because they're different people. And it's nothing to do with what happened on stage, nothing to do with the quality of the production, nothing to do with how comfortable the theatre was. It is to do with the fact that they are not neutral people. They bring themselves, their personalities, their experience, their situations. And those situations don't stop changing what will happen. So by the time those 2 young people are 30, the one who went to drama college might be in media sales, and the other person might be a leading light of their amateur drama group. You can't tell. And that is because the experience of art is one of recreating what a creator has made. This is a very perceptive quote from Alberto Manguel and his History of Reading. And it explains why nobody has ever read the same book as anyone else. Because if I simply say the man approached the house on the cliff, everyone in this room has a different image of the man, the house, and the cliff. Because we filter everything we experience through our own perceptions, our own experience, our own understandings. That means, my second proposition, that nothing can be proved about art. Right? Like impact, the word proof is an inappropriate thing to bring into this world. Art is ambiguous, always, inevitably. It has no universal value, no universal purpose, no universal way of operating, no universal reality, and no universal existence. It is always culturally dependent. It's anchored in time and space and specific to actual people, because it's interactive, because it is created by us. Now, if we use concepts that come from the natural sciences, such as impact or proof or measurement, we are in grave danger of approaching our attempts to understand art in misguided ways, and perhaps more seriously, to lead ourselves down wrong paths where we believe that there are things that can be known and that we therefore then act upon them. This is from Karl Popper's autobiography, and he's talking about precision and certainty. Karl Popper was a scientist and a philosopher of science, and he says that precision and certainty are not only impossible to attain in science, never mind in terms of art. He says that they are potentially misleading if we think that we can attain them. So, being a bit more practical and bearing those two ideas in mind, the idea that art is interaction and we cannot prove anything about it. My third proposition is that monitoring is not evaluation. 20 years ago, when I was still working as an arts practitioner, we were sometimes, it was just the beginning of the point when funding bodies were asking for what we would do about monitoring and evaluation. And that phrase, it seems to me, has rather disappeared. I think it's a really important phrase. We now talk only about evaluation. Evaluation is not monitoring, and it's a mistake to put them together. Monitoring is factual and quantitative. You can prove things through monitoring. You can absolutely say how many young people attended your activity. What you can't do is say what they got from that in the concepts of proving and measuring. Monitoring, I think, is concerned with accountability, and a great deal of the time we are using evaluation as a monitoring tool. In other words, funding bodies are requiring grantees to produce evaluations which, on a good day, are read by the grants officer and nobody else, as ways of proving that the funding was spent appropriately. Now, that's a task of monitoring, not of evaluation. If we understand the difference between monitoring and evaluation, we can consider standards which are appropriate to monitoring, but recognize that quality is another matter, and we will need other strategies to consider monitoring. So by standards, I mean we should be able to monitor, did things happen as they were supposed to happen? Did they happen on time? Were the artists who ran the workshops trained and appropriately skilled to deliver the work, and so on? All of those things can be tested and quantified and accounted for, but they are not evaluation. They are the beginnings, they are, if you like, the foundation on which you might then build evaluation. My fourth proposition, leading on from that, is that if evaluation is not monitoring, nor is it learning. What I mean by that is that we often use evaluation again for other things. We think that evaluation will do our reporting for us, in the sense of monitoring, as I've just said. Above all, I think in the arts world, we think it will do our advocacy for us. That if somehow we produce an evaluation report that is so copper-bottomed, so rigorously conducted, that the people who do not support our work, the people who are reluctant to provide funding for it, will suddenly see the light. They will have a Damascene experience and say, of course I understand why your work is important and essential, in fact. I'm going to double your grant. Evaluation is not effective at advocacy because it's not the right tool for it. Advocacy is best conducted through advocacy programs, through initiatives that advocate. Evaluation and monitoring might provide you with some of the information, some of the knowledge, some of the data that you might use in advocacy. But actually, in now over 15 years of talking to policymakers on the back of research reports, I am largely convinced that research reports do not change people's minds. Research reports allow people to believe that the positions they want to take are rational. And that's a very different business. If you want to change somebody's mind, you have to look at their beliefs, their experiences. Most of us change our minds through experience, and secondly through argument, and only thirdly as a result of research. And what follows on from that is that evaluation is not learning. There's a huge amount of evaluation going on in the arts at the moment, but I think there's much less learning going on because people are doing evaluation often for the wrong reasons, either to achieve monitoring or to report or to advocate. As a result, there is a vast quantity of evaluation material being written and published, and very little of it is being read, and even less of it is being acted upon and changing the practice. So for me, good evaluation asks not, does this work? Can I prove that this had a transformative effect? But asks questions like, how did it work and why did it work? Because how and why might lead you to change your approach. It opens up discussion instead of closing it down. I very often feel that when people are presenting evaluation reports of arts programs, actually it's exactly closing it down that they want to do. They want to say, this is now the final word, so stop bugging me and give me the money. It allows people to acknowledge mistakes. We all make mistakes, constantly. Our practice is full of mistakes. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be any good, because it would simply mean that we were doing something we knew how to do in our sleep. So you have to have an evaluation that allows people to accept that mistakes happen and to learn from them. Good evaluation develops knowledge and policy, and it improves practice and results. Finally, I think it empowers and supports participation, and I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. Now, in terms of my fifth proposition, this is where it all comes to. I think the purpose of evaluation is to produce better work. If the outcomes, what some people call the impact of art, cannot be guaranteed, predicted or controlled, but the quality of the interactions that are created, the arts projects, can be, which is where we talk about standards, we might talk about principles, we might talk about criteria, which are three different ways of guaranteeing the quality of the interactions that you deliver. And you can also seek to guarantee the quality of the thinking, the practice and the debate that is produced by arts work. What I think that Feynman, Popper and Manguel all have in common in the quotes that I gave you is that they are logically taking us to a point where what matters is not our ability to define a final truth about anything, it is the quality of the debate and the discussion and the reflection that we can have about the truth that we are trying to understand. So in conclusion, what would take us forward from where we are, given that I've outlined some of the problems and some of the complexities and some of the things that I think are not working well? Well, I think first of all a separation of monitoring and evaluation, which is not a very difficult thing to do. I think that everything should be monitored in the sense of being able to be accountable for what is done, what monies are spent and so on. I think that evaluation should be far more selective, not least because evaluating inevitably interferes with artistic processes and experiences by making people reflect self-consciously about some of the underlying ideas. So I think we should be using evaluation very selectively, very carefully, and very well, only where the value of undertaking evaluation outweighs the potential damage that may be caused by the process of evaluation itself. I think that we need the art sector to make a commitment to self-evaluation. In other words, that you are not evaluating for other people, be that the Arts Council or anyone else. You are evaluating primarily as an artist or as an organisation for yourself, to improve your knowledge, understanding of what you do, and to improve its practice. And that form of evaluation should be participatory, by which I mean that it should involve everyone who is connected with the project. And who defines quality is a shared question, not one that is only held by the manager or the artist. I think that organisations should have evaluation policies. I haven't yet seen one, ever. But the idea that what I mean by an organisational evaluation policy is simply a policy that says when you will evaluate, why, what you will do with the results. I think we should have clear performance standards that would support monitoring, that would enable us to say this performance, this workshop, this activity was done to the proper professional standard. It may not have produced the results or the outcomes that we hoped for, but that was not because it was not well done. It is the crucial difference between being able to understand when failure is competent and when it's incompetent. And at the moment, most of our evaluation is not able to distinguish between competent and incompetent failure. And finally, I think we need criteria for thinking about quality. We cannot resolve what is high artistic quality. That is a culturally subjective, time-sensitive question. What we consider in this room to be artistic quality will not be the same as what people on the streets of Birmingham consider, never mind the streets of Athens or the streets of Tokyo. Never mind what people will consider to be artistic quality in 25 years' time. But what we can have is criteria to help us identify what we think are the characteristics of quality and will enable us to have a stronger and clearer conversation about that. That's a big agenda, and not all of it will be addressed today. But I hope that I've given you at least the beginning of some things to agree with, some things to disagree with, and some things to take into your workshop sessions. Thank you very much.